Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, February the 17th, 2021. I wanted to start off by acknowledging the fact that one of my viewers, a former student from St. Mary's College, Janelle Dombrow-Schinner, suggested a title for this ongoing video series, which I thought was a quite good suggestion. So I think we're going to employ that as the overarching title, and that is Getting Back to Connection. I'm sorry, I didn't even read it right. Getting Back to Conversation. So that was good, and that's that high-quality St. Mary's College Communication Studies degree kicking in. All right, enough of that. So I want to talk just briefly, recap, and possibly frame it a little bit differently what we talked about last week. And I want to frame it in the terms of a sliding scale of choice from others to you. Now, what do I mean by that? In 1968, TV, newspapers, others made more choices for you. Network executives, newspaper editors chose what you would watch or read in their papers or on TV. You made a choice. ABC, NBC, CBS, one newspaper over another if you even had that option in your city or town. And you made a choice, but your choices were limited, and most of the choices were in the hands of others. Let's move to 1996, when the advent of Fox News and MSNBC to join CNN for the three major cable networks. And then, of course, we know the proliferation after that. What would happen now, unlike in 68 when you basically had three choices, now you have many choices. And whereas there was a more or less homogenous content in the 68 network news, now with the different cable networks, you begin to see more heterogeneity. You sampled, you selected one, and then you usually stayed with it. So let's fast forward to 2021. Now we make a choice, but sometimes we're not aware that we're actually making a choice until maybe after the fact. It's an unwitting choice, and sometimes it's a simple click. We click on a news story that's brought to us by our Google feed, or we click on a YouTube video, or we click on something on someone's Facebook page, and that leads us down a path that has certain implications. And here are two of them, and I think these are the kind of the broad brush strokes. Number one, the content you are fed, and number two, the people you meet. Now, before we explore those ideas further, I want to pause and share with you the results of a survey that was recently conducted. This was of Generation Zs. That's young people who were born between 1997 and 2012. I guess I date myself by saying young people. But they were asked why they use social media. And here were the top three answers. They chose to use social media because it connected them to the world, it connected them to others, and it kept them informed. Now, a few comments about these survey results. First, we humans are social creatures, and to a greater or lesser degree, depending on your personality type, we long for connections and community. We want to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And for many of us, we are resorting to the internet and social media to make these connections, to find our friends, our people, or what Ari Kruglinski from the University of Maryland calls our tribe. The second comment is that this connection making via the internet and social media is even more pronounced in this time of the pandemic, when people are experiencing social isolation. I want to raise a caution flag, and if you're wondering why, you can write me a note in the comments section. I think it's just, we should say that this is a cause for concern. That I think in this time of social isolation, people are subject to influences they would not be so susceptible to in normal times. All right, back to the main point. You make a choice, sometimes almost unwittingly, and then there are certain implications of that choice. The first is the content you are fed. Now let's go back to 1968. Remember George Gerbner talked about mainstreaming, about the town hall, the street corner. And whether you were in Arizona or in Vermont, you were getting the same nightly news. We were all, whether it was NBC, ABC, or CBS, we were all pretty much receiving the same content. Now, in 2021, it is quite possible that the content you are attending to and the content that your next door neighbor is attending to might have very little overlap. In other words, we don't have a common language. We don't have a common set of facts. We don't have common stories. So there's that. The content you are fed. One implication of the choices that you make on the internet and in social media. Second, the people you meet. Now let me just real quickly, and we could spend a lot of time talking about this, but let me real quickly give you Facebook friend suggestions as an example or an illustration of what I'm talking about. What is the algorithm that usually, and by the way, sometimes lately, Facebook suggested some people to me that are, I don't know what they're up to, but by and large, the people that it suggests to me as Facebook friends are friends of my current Facebook friends. So the idea is, well, if you like Bill, you'll like Joe. That's an interesting assumption, but that gives you an idea that what happens over time is the circle becomes narrowing rather than broadening. There is a movement toward homogeneity over heterogeneity. And we become more and more isolated into social groupings of people like us who share the same view of the world that we do. Now, we're going to talk more next week about what happens in those kinds of environments of homogeneous groups, and particularly on the internet. But I hope that you found this to be helpful. I'd love to hear your comments. I'm sorry this is dragging out so long, but as I dive into these topics, I realize it just takes time, and I'm trying to limit myself to 7 to 8 minutes on these videos. I'd love to hear your comments. I hope you like this. If you found it helpful, I hope that you would share it with others. Thanks. Have a great day. And for some of you, stay warm.